Tonight, I want to talk about a prominent former Liberal Democrat politician. Now, I should say from the outset, I don't have a problem with the Lib Dems, right? Some of my best friends are self-hating vegans. But now it seems that one of the heroes of the Liberal Democrat movement has sold his soul to big tech. On Wednesday, we learned that Clegg had been appointed as the President of Global Affairs at Meta. That, by the way, is the new name for Facebook. And if you're under 30, you may not even have heard of Facebook either. It's basically like an old version of TikTok, but not so many dancing nurses and people with pink hair lecturing you about their pronouns. So why has Clegg decided to pursue a career in Silicon Valley? What's going on? What could possibly have inspired him to shift the direction of his career from politics to social media in return for a mere £15 million a year? I guess he's just following his vocation. Well, Clegg will apparently be in charge of Facebook's policy decisions, and this will, of course, include WhatsApp and Instagram, also owned by Facebook. Should we be worried? The man was once the minion of David Cameron. He now arguably has more power than any elected official. He gets to decide the limits of acceptable speech on one of the world's biggest social media platforms. And this, remember, is the guy who wrote this book, How to Stop Brexit. I believe the working title was How to Stop Democracy, but the publishers thought it was a bit too on the nose. Now, the key thing with any new job is to be able to get on with one's employers. So with that in mind, it's worth looking at what Clegg had to say in a column for the Evening Standard back in 2016. He said, "I'm not especially bedazzled by Facebook. While I have good friends who work at the company, I actually find the messianic Californian new worldly touchy-feely culture of Facebook a little grating. Nor am I sure that companies such as Facebook really pay all the tax they could." That might make things a bit awkward at the office, but I imagine the £15 million a year will be some consolation. Of course, £15 million does seem a lot, doesn't it? And given that Clegg once said that bankers' bonuses were gratuitously offensive, I imagine he'll be giving most of that away to a cat home or something. I mean, he wouldn't want to open himself up to accusations of hypocrisy or anything like that. Big tech censorship is going to be one of the next big free speech battles, and that's largely because it's so misunderstood. We continually hear the argument that these are private companies and they can do what they like. But as I pointed out before on this show, this small group of multi-billion-dollar corporations now preside over the de facto public square of the digital age. They have a kind of collective oligopoly over the principal means of global discourse. And with that comes incredible power. And you can't vote them out because they're unelected. And rather than look into how this power can be curbed, our current government is looking to expand it. Now, you'll have heard all about the Online Safety Bill, which was formerly known as the Online Harms Bill, which ostensibly has some good aims. I mean, we're all disturbed how easy it is for children to access pornographic imagery online or by websites that encourage self-harm or even suicide. But the Online Safety Bill goes even further. I mean, it specifically addresses what the government calls legal but harmful speech. And what exactly does that mean? Well, it turns out that the government will be leaving the tech giants to decide what exactly constitutes harmful speech. And let's consider their record on that. Now, feminists are often thrown off social media platforms for stating biological facts, because biological facts are apparently harmful, particularly to those who don't know anything about biology. Twitter has occasional purges, which often include right-leaning political accounts or even satirical content, because the people who run Twitter aren't known for their sense of humour. Mind you, the body that they set up to dictate the limits of acceptable speech is quite genuinely called the Trust and Safety Council, which is such a chillingly Orwellian phrase that it would be quite funny if they weren't being deadly serious. We know that Silicon Valley has an ideological bias. The CEOs have admitted it. They talk about promoting healthy conversation and opposing hate speech. But as usual, when they talk about hate speech, they really mean speech they hate. And if you accept the idea that free speech does not include hate speech, whatever that is, and then you decide that anyone who disagrees with your political opinion is hateful, then you can justify censoring them under hate speech laws, and that's kind of how it works. Sometimes big tech do delete genuinely hateful comments, but more often than not, it's just statements they don't agree with, those that challenge their ideological preconceptions. And then they can say they're not censoring anyone, they're just preventing the spread of hate. It's a neat trick. And what about all that fake news we hear about? Well, personally, I don't trust the zealots of Silicon Valley to decide what is fake and what is real. I mean, these are the same people who claim that biological males have no advantage if they compete in women's sports. So their grip on reality isn't really all that secure. And remember when YouTube were deleting content and deactivating accounts because some scientists were suggesting that maybe, just maybe, the COVID pandemic started because the virus may have leaked from a lab in Wuhan? And this was dismissed as an insane conspiracy theory. unlike the theory that some farmer must have had sex with a bat or something. Now, it's generally accepted that the lab leak theory is actually likely to be true. And what can we learn from all this? Well, I suppose we could say that it's probably best that a group of kids at Silicon Valley don't get to decide what ideas should or should not be discussed. Fake news, like hate speech, it's just a phrase that people use to silence others if they happen to disapprove of what they say. Now, I don't have anything against Nick Clegg, not really, and I don't resent him getting a nice, cushy job. But I do worry when someone with his track record gets the kind of role that could make the fight for free speech even harder. Don't forget that Clegg pushed for increased state regulation of the media during the Leveson inquiry. He's no fan of free speech. But maybe, I'm being cynical. Maybe he'll do a fantastic job. Maybe Nick Clegg will convince our big tech overlords that they have to stop censoring opinions they don't like, that they have to reassert their former commitment to free speech and the marketplace of ideas. Maybe Nick Clegg can make us remember a time when the Liberal Democrats were actually liberal.